The story of the Marsden family, known as the Marsden murders, is a tragic tale set against the backdrop of the brewing industry and the British colonial experience in India. Arthur Eagles Marsden, born in 1849 in Pimlico, London, came from a family deeply embedded in brewing. His father, Robert, worked as a brewer, likely at Watney's Brewery in Pimlico, and his grandfather, George Eagles Marsden, was a brewer in Lewisham. Arthur's mother, Anna, was also linked to the trade through her family, as her father, John Hector, owned Hector's Brewery in Dorset. In 1861, Robert Marsden relocated his family to Stepenhill, near Burton upon Trent, an area renowned for its breweries, where he may have worked for the Meakin family's Abbey Brewery. Arthur later joined the family business and began working in breweries, eventually finding himself in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, by the early 1870s. There, he met Catherine Vaughan, a woman from an Irish Catholic family, and despite family objections, possibly due to their differing religious backgrounds, they married in Manhattan, New York in 1873. Shortly after their marriage, Arthur and Catherine moved back to England, where Arthur began working for the brewing entrepreneur Henry Meakin. Meakin didn't just have a brewery in Burton-on-Trent, he also had several breweries in the foothills of the Himalayas. He assigned Arthur to be the manager and brewer at the Nainital Brewery. Brewing at high altitudes allowed for better preservation of beer in India's challenging climate, making locations like Nainital valuable for serving British soldiers. In December 1874, Arthur, Catherine and their first child sailed from Southampton for India, where they went on to have 5 more children. In 1879, Arthur's brother Hector, also a brewer, joined them, and then their youngest brother John followed. John managed the Dalhousie Brewery, but after 2 years at the age of 22, he committed suicide. By 1890, Arthur was asked to manage the Dalhousie Brewery and the family moved. It was here where the tragedy continued. The Dalhousie Brewery was built, like most breweries in the Himalayan foothills, on a steep slope. The brewer's house is the 2-story building to the left of the photo. From the start of their marriage, Arthur knew that Catherine was Catholic, and he didn't seem to have a problem with it. They even sent their children to Catholic schools. However, in 1878, Arthur joined the Freemasons, and tensions in their family grew over time. It got worse when Catherine and her 2 eldest children, Robert and Mabel, began attending Mass at a Catholic chapel in Dalhousie, run by Belgian priests. Arthur's fellow Masons in the Dalhousie Lodge were not impressed, and one allegedly told him, "Listen, Marsden, if your wife was mine, I would lodge a bullet in her skull this instant." This was the turning point. The conflicted Arthur had changed, and he began to threaten his family. Robert, their eldest son, was obviously worried about his father, as he would climb out of his bedroom window early in the morning, run down the hill to hear Mass, and then be back before his father could suspect anything. In September 1893, Catherine and the children went to church, and when one of the priests asked after Mr. Marsden, Catherine replied, "I am certain that one day or other he will kill us all." Mabel then added, "And that is why I have said several times that we should all leave the house." Her mother replied, "No, my dear, better suffer in silence. God will take care of us." The following month, on the 10th of October 1893, there was an argument between Arthur and his eldest daughter Mabel. Catherine tried to intervene, but Arthur's temper erupted. He first threw an ink bottle at Catherine's head. Robert, their son, who had just turned 20, came to defend his mother, which led to a scuffle. Arthur assaulted Robert, dragged him outside and threw him into a ravine. Robert was bruised but otherwise uninjured, and the 2 returned to the house. Arthur stormed upstairs, and Robert and Mabel, attempting to act as if everything was okay, sat at the family piano and played, while their mother cried in the adjoining apartment. Suddenly Arthur reappeared, went into the apartment where his wife sat, and the horrified youngsters heard 2 loud shots. Robert rushed into the room, where he saw his mother had been brutally murdered. Arthur then turned and shot him in the head 2 or 3 times. It was later revealed that he had held the gun close enough to his victims that they suffered powder burns to their faces. Mabel stood horrified in the doorway. He then turned the gun on his daughter. The bullet passed through her cheeks, and she ran out of the house and fell to the floor. The coachman and horsegroom saw Mabel fall and pleaded with Arthur not to kill the girl. Arthur ignored them and shot her again, saying, "Now you are sure to die." He then returned to the house and calmly sent a telegram to Henry Meakin, his employer, telling him that another manager would be needed for the brewery immediately. He also wrote to the authorities, including Lieutenant Burton, the Assistant Civil Commissioner, detailing the events of the evening and declaring himself ready to be arrested. He then went out to the brewery and started preparing for the next day's brewing before surrendering to the police. In the meantime, the coachman, Abdul Ghaffar, who had seen the events unfold, managed to carry Mabel with the help of some servants to the nearby house of Captain Donnelly. The captain's son-in-law, Dr. Keatley, was at the house and examined Mabel. Miraculously, she was still alive, but the second bullet was lodged in her neck. They didn't expect her to live, but amazingly, she survived. When Arthur's letters reached the lieutenant and the assistant commissioner, policemen and a surgeon named Dr. O'Neill went straight to the brewery. They were prepared to search the countryside to find Arthur, but to their surprise there was no need. Arthur surrendered calmly and was taken to Howlett jail. Arthur claimed that he acted in self-defense after Robert supposedly threatened him with a gun. He said that in a fit of madness he then went on to shoot his wife and daughter. 2 months later, however, Mabel had recovered enough to testify at the High Court Justice in Lahore against her father following English law. At the trial, Arthur pleaded not guilty on all 3 accounts. He insisted that after he had argued with his son over Robert's laziness, Robert had threatened to shoot him and that he ran for his own revolver, and when Robert aimed a gun at him, he fired his revolver in self-defense. Dr. O'Neill, who had seen the bodies at the scene, stated that he was positive there was a gun on the floor beside Robert, although later Dr. O'Neill said that there might have been a gun on the floor. No evidence of an additional gun was presented in court. Mabel, however, recalled the awful events of that night in great detail. She said that Arthur had shot her mother first, and then her brother, and denied that her brother was lazy. She gave evidence that her father used to throw chairs and bottles at her mother, and had a very bad temper, which used to get worse about the time of the new moon. The defence claimed that Mabel's testimony wasn't accurate, and she couldn't remember properly because of her injuries. Arthur's defence went on to say, "He is innocent. He has been a Freemason since 1878, and he hates the Catholic religion." Against his will, his wife and children embraced that religion. Against his will, also, his wife had placed the children in a Catholic school. Since the conversion of his family, his home had become a hell to him. True, he has killed his son, but in the sad struggle, the ungrateful son was the aggressor. He acknowledges that after that, he killed his wife, and that he also tried to kill his daughter, but that he was not, at the time, accountable for his acts. The jury was sympathetic towards Arthur, and unanimously acquitted him of the murder of his son, suggesting that it was in self-defence, but finding him guilty of the murder of Catherine and the attempted murder of his daughter whilst temporarily insane. The last 2 verdicts were possibly under Indian law and not English law, suggesting that there may have been some manipulation in the justice system to get a more lenient sentence. After the verdicts, the lawyers and members of the public went up to Arthur and congratulated him. This did not sit right with one Indian newspaper which reported that the sober and educated members of an Anglo-Indian community should be offering congratulations to a man whose hands are stained with the blood of his whole family, and who could be regarded best as an irresponsible homicide would have seemed a week ago inconceivable. Arthur was not a free man, though. The judge, Plowden, said that he should be kept in custody in the Lahore Central Jail pending the orders of the Punjab government. In February 1894, the Punjab government ruled that Arthur was a dangerous criminal lunatic, and he was committed to the Bhawanipur Lunatic Asylum in Calcutta. In 1902, they transferred him to Port Blair in the Andaman Islands, where the Indian government exiled dangerous political prisoners. Here he was allowed to roam about and tried to marry a native Christian girl. This fortunately didn't happen, and in 1906 he was moved again to another asylum in Lahore, where he died aged 85. The tragedy continued within the Marsden family, as Arthur's brother Hector also died by suicide in 1897. Meanwhile, Mabel's resilience allowed her to build a life in India, dedicating herself to education and service. She went on to have a long career as a teacher, working at convents in Darjeeling and Simla until the age of 84. Once a respected brewing family, the Marsdens found their lives unravelled in the unforgiving foothills of the Himalayas. A sombre reminder of the personal tragedies amid the complex dynamics of family, faith, and social pressures in the 19th century. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Historical Crime Chronicles. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more of history's darkest and lesser-known tales, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on this tragic case and let us know if there are any other historical crimes you'd like us to cover. Thank you for watching. See you next time.